What's going on, everybody? Patrick with Siser North America coming at you with a DIY project, something you can do at home, maybe something that you can do with the kids while they're off of school. And what we're going to actually use today is our pressure sensitive vinyl, which is typically used to make, stickers, projects when you're, making maybe custom mugs and stuff like that. Our Siser application tape, which is used with our pressure sensitive vinyl, but we're going to do it in a little bit different way here. We're actually going to be making some custom wood signs. Now, this is something that I like to do at home. I involve my kids, my wife, and we like to make custom wood signs for friends, for family. We like to also make custom wood signs just to decorate our house. It's really simple to do, it's really simple to use, and also we're going to show you some tips and tricks along the way. And without further ado, let's get started. Now, just to start us off, a couple of things that we're going to use, a couple of tools we're going to use today in this project is we're going to use Podge. I'll explain why Podge is important later on in getting nice crisp lines when you have a cut file that you're looking to do a paint stencil with the pressure sensitive vinyl. Also, as always, got to have paint. Can't have a paint stencil and a nice painted sign if we don't have paint. So this can be any color you want. At your local craft stores, your local Hobby Lobbies, things of that nature can actually provide you with the paint that you need. Along with the paint, we're going to have a couple of paint brushes. These basically are going to be to lay down the Mod Podge. They're also going to be used to put down your paint coat. Lastly, this is something that you can use to kind of beautify your project a little bit more, as I like to say, but it's going to be stain. Stain comes in all different varieties, comes in all different colors, there's all different finish types. This is also a way to beautify your project, and as we like to say, add a little pizzazz to your paint stencil here. So let's get started. Alrighty, a couple of cool tips and tricks that you can use when staining, and what I always like to recommend to folks is using something like cheesecloth. You can also use paper towel. If cheesecloth is something that you're not able to get at this time, it just helps to apply the stain. You can also use paint brushes. Just understand that it's going to give you a different finish depending on what type of application you use. Another thing that I strongly recommend, especially if you're working with kids on projects like this, gloves, guys. Gloves, gloves, gloves. I know that right now we're in a little bit of a shortage of them, but gloves, something to protect your hands, because stain does stain your hands as well as it does wood or any other surfaces. So let's practice, safe application. Let's practice being safe when we're using these materials. And obviously, if you're a kid out there that's using stain, always have an adult. I think that that's the most important, but that's why we tie in the family element. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up my stain here, being as careful as I possibly can. Put on my glove. Now, a couple of important tips to understand. When you're doing a wood sign, a lot of times what I like to do is I like to just stain the surface of the sign that I'll actually be applying the paint to, because you can always come back later on once everything's dry and make sure that you're staining the backside, the sides. Really, we just want to get a nice clean finish on the top where we will have all of our stain, but we'll also have our paint and our design on there. So with that said, go ahead and start staining our sign. Now, depending on what kind of finish you want or what you want the sign to actually look like, you can be as liberal or as conservative with the stain as possible. I like a little bit darker finish. The actual stain that we're using, just really quick, is actually a mocha. So it's a darker stain anyway. I can make the stain look a little bit lighter if I go ahead and do a post wipe, as I like to call it, where I'll actually lay down a gracious amount of stain and I go back and I can actually wipe it away. But what that'll end up doing is giving you a nice finish to your stain. So now we can get started on our cut file. Now we're using two different types of application. We're going to go ahead and use our blue PSV, which is a removable PSV. So there's two different types. There's permanent, which is going to stick long term. There's removable, which is going to allow us enough adherence to do our paint mask, but also is going to allow us to remove it from the wood sign without damaging the wood sign, because obviously we don't want to have to go back and restain or have an issue there. Alrighty, now that our cut file is done, what we're going to go ahead now and do is we're going to weed out our image. Alright, next step, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I want to trim down my design a little bit, because when I'm actually applying any PSV to a wood sign, at the end of the day, the removable PSV will work just fine when we actually apply it. However, I want to minimize the amount of space that is making contact with the wood, just in case we have any little small pieces of shards that pull up here and there. That's very common, and we'll also show a tip and trick if that does happen on how to fix it. So right now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim down my design as much as I can. And for me, I like to trim it down as much as I can and even get it around the words, and I'll show you kind of how to ensure that you're not going to overpaint and actually paint onto the wood and not your design. There you have it. So next up is going to be our wood sign. Now what we're going to show you how to do is use the Siser application tape to then go ahead and transfer the paint mask onto your design so we can get started on the paint. I'm going to go ahead and line up my paint mask with the application tape. I'm going to cut out just enough to conserve scraps. If you're anything like me, I like to preserve and conserve as much as I possibly can because I am somebody that'll hop in the scrap bin to do a small project later on. So that's why I go ahead and I cut all of my stuff out. I make sure that I'm not overusing my materials and I'm able to save those for later projects. Now, there are many ways to go ahead and apply your pressure sensitive vinyl to the application tape. One way that I actually prefer in a lot of cases is I like to put my application tape sticky side up. That means the shiny side or the logo side down. And I actually like to do the roll method. So I start from the middle of my PSV. I go ahead and apply it down and I roll it to the sides. Does it do any different than any other application method? Maybe, maybe not. I just have a preference on how I apply my paint mask, so then I can go ahead and flip it over. Remember, anytime that you're squeegeing out bubbles, start from the middle, work your way out. We're going to start at a corner. We're going to go ahead and use my little weeder here just to pick up a corner, a road corner. Pick our design up, and there you have it. Now we have our actual paint stencil ready to go. So now I'm going to take my wood sign that I've already stained, take my paint stencil and put it on top. Go ahead and grab my Siser squeegee, and again we're starting from the middle and working our way out to the corners. And we're just going to work any bubbles, any excess in, get a real good adhered piece of PSV that we're using for a paint mask today. Now, just a quick tip too, when you are doing any type of stain, these are all pre-dried. Understand that this was something that was stained earlier this morning. We gave it a good 2 or 3 hours. A tip is in there, if you have a hair dryer, you can go ahead and hit it with a hair dryer just to kind of speed up the dry time. If you have kids like me, they want to get the project done as quick as possible. So typically I'm hitting it with a hair dryer or a heat gun, whatever I have laying around the house that'll allow me to dry that stain a little bit faster. So next what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to pull our application tape away. And all I'm doing right now is I'm just making sure that I don't have any pieces that kind of come up on their own. I'm not ripping my application tape or my paint mask. And the reason for that, we'll show you kind of how to seal these edges in a minute once I get this all laid out. And again, I'm not necessarily worried about my PSV adhering to this sign permanently because I want to be able to remove it afterwards. This is just part of the process in creating a paint mask out of PSV. Alrighty, perfect. So now we got a nice pretty sign here. We have our design, our paint mask that we used our Siser PSV for, used our Siser application tape to go ahead and put onto the wood sign that we stained. Again, I allowed my stain to dry for a short amount of time. What I like to do afterwards, I just take my squeegee and lightly go over just to make sure that any seams that maybe lifted a little bit from the application tape, which is normal, are all down. I always have a little bit of masking tape, painter's tape, clear tape, just any type of tape that I can go ahead and kind of section off the borders of my design. And the reason why I do that is because I want to make sure that I'm able to just paint the sign and not have to worry about getting any mess off of the actual paint mask or PSV and onto my sign. I'm just taping off all of the borders so that I can kind of be a little bit more sloppy. I have little kids, again, sometimes they're sloppy when they paint. So we just like to make it as easy as possible and easy to clean up at the end of the day. So go ahead and just section off these last couple of borders here. Alrighty, next what I'm gonna go ahead and do, and again, you can pick this up at any craft store, Mod Podge. Mod Podge is awesome for a variety of projects. You can probably go online and see how you can do picture negatives with Mod Podge. Here's why I like to use it. Anytime you're using pressure sensitive vinyl, you're using any type of application tape, the best thing that I like Mod Podge for is going ahead and sealing up all of the edges and getting a nice crisp line when I'm using my application tape. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is take my Mod Podge, just a regular foam brush. You can use a regular paint brush, it's whatever you'd prefer. And I'm just gonna put a liberal amount across the whole sign. And again, here's another reason why we use that masking tape or that painter's tape, is so that we can go ahead and make sure that if we're a little bit sloppy, we're not getting any of our project on the actual wood sign or the stained sign itself. Alrighty, I like to go in all different directions just because I like to make sure I get a good solid seal through everything here. And then we're gonna go ahead and do the top part of our design. And that is all there is to that portion of this. What we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna let this Mod Podge dry off a little bit. We'll come back, we'll show you how to apply the paint, and then, beautify this thing with a little bit of PSV. So our Mod Podge had dried off. Next step is we're gonna go ahead and paint. And what I'm doing today is I'm gonna do a little design where I'm using white paint. I like using white a lot on darker stains. It just pops a little bit more. Again, the stain, the paint, the design, it's up to you. Use your creativity. Again, it's just something that you can do with the kids. It's something fun to do at home. But anyways, let's get into it. So using a smaller foam brush, typically this is what I like to use. They come in multi-packs. Use a bigger brush just to kind of spread my Mod Podge out, make sure I'm a little sloppy with that. Now I want something a little bit more detailed so I can really get my paint onto the design. So, perfect thing about these, just a little tip, which doesn't make a difference if you have somewhere to put it, is I like to kind of flip my paint upside down. And then once I open it up, which you might not be able to see on camera, but it kind of works as a little paint tray for me. So now I have all of my paint in there. That should be plenty to use for this project. And then also there's not a lot of cleanup because I can put the top right back on and we're good to go. So I'm gonna take a little paint on my paintbrush. And all I'm doing right now is I'm just gonna spread this out throughout the whole design. And I'm really gonna make sure that I get each individual letter, because we wanna make sure the paint spreads thin enough, but we also wanna make sure we have enough of a spread onto our design that once we go back over it and give it that final coat, it's going to be, real nice, vibrant, and full. Now what I'm doing, and something you're gonna notice that I'm trying to accomplish when I'm painting, is as I go through my design, kind of working my way from one side to the other, and then in this case I'll work my way up after this. What I'm also doing is allowing paint to dry just enough as I'm kind of sectioning off my project so that I can just do this all in one shot. I can go through and then I can paint again, lay that top coat, lay that final layer down, and then we'll be able to pull this up and reveal obviously what we hope is a pretty cool design. Now that I've done my design basically from, well, it'll be your left to right, and then up, I'm gonna go back into the beginning, and all I'm gonna do for this part of it is I'm gonna dab my paint on there. And what I'm trying to do is just get enough to fill in the actual valley or fill in the design, but not too much to where I'm gonna cause the pressure sensitive vinyl that we're using for a paint mask today to peel up and then get, bleed marks and stuff like that. Alrighty, perfect. So now we're all done. Again, I used the majority of the paint that's in that cap, which is fine. If you don't, all you do, flip it back over. Your paint will go back into your jar. You're conserving paint. These guys, wash them, medium temperature. We'll get all of that, that Mod Podge off as well as the paint for you. So now next step, what we're gonna do is we're gonna give this a few minutes to dry. Once it's dry, we're gonna be able to take off of all the painter's tape. Again, you can use masking tape. You don't even necessarily have to use it. I just use it so that I can be a little bit sloppy with it. And then we'll go ahead and lift our design, finish it up, and then we'll have a, a beautiful little sign that we've made and created for you today. Alrighty, so now our paint is dried. What What we're gonna go ahead and do now is take off our pressure sensitive vinyl, take off our paint mask, that'll show our design. We'll weed out the couple of cavities that are there to expose what we have created here. So, I always like to work my way through the design, just kind of making sure that I'm peeling everything back properly. I'm making sure that there's no wood that's peeling up or anything like that. And again, it's normal if it happens. Some people would say it adds character to your design. For me personally, I just prefer a little bit crisper, cleaner look. I'll take off this paint, there we go. Now we're just gonna weed out a couple cavities. So there's a trick to this, okay? I'm using our Siser weeder. There it is, right there. What I'm gonna actually do is instead of taking my weeder straight down into the wood, potentially peeling up some of the wood, I'm gonna take it more at an angle, and these are like the perfect angle to kind of do that with. So when I'm actually going through, I'm trying to go down and over. So we're just trying to get underneath the actual PSV so we don't take any of that wood away. Perfect. So there is about 98% done with our wood sign. What I kind of planned out last minute is maybe adding a little bit of PSV in there to give it a little bit more of a pop. So I actually pre-cut already and made a little flower here that we're gonna add for the eye of the spring, just to give it a little bit extra. So we're gonna go ahead and peel all this back. I'm just gonna take it, line it up where the eye should be, give it a little bit of a rub down with my finger because we don't need that much. This is all permanent vinyl that I'm using now for this portion of it, so it stays on there. Go ahead and peel this back, making sure that all my vinyl stays on. We're good there. We got a couple of spots that lift, but no problem. We can go ahead and push all those down. And there you have it. Now we have fully decorated sign. In total time would take you about 2 hours to do one of these. You can speed it up again by just pre-staining your wood, drying it off. I used a craft cutter in this case. It's not necessary, but also at the same time it just gives you a nice rich, beautiful sign that now I can hang it up somewhere in the house and hopefully you know, add a little beauty to my home. That's our project for today. Again, I'm Patrick with Siser North America. If you have any questions, if you're looking for this cut file in particular, go ahead on to info@siserna.com, ask for me, and we can definitely help you out along the way. Any questions, head over to that there. You have a great rest of your day, and look forward to seeing you soon.